Worries about aftertaste are like secondary. It was a filthy world and it was a filthy story, but it was an important story. So to me, the importance of the story is more important to me than how I feel about myself during and after writing it.
Here you're saying something which is also about aftertaste. In other words, aftertaste is not a self-indulgent, kind of narcissistic category. Aftertaste means it's a litmus test for the value of what you're doing. And what you described was the rush. Right? The rush is exactly what I'm talking about. The rush of I assume you're describing the rush in its most positive sense. Right? And Luke's nodding. Yes. Right? In other words, this wasn't the rush of cocaine. It wasn't the rush of, kind of degraded pornography. This was the rush of having saved lives. That's an incredible rush.
It's an incredible rush.
That's a gorgeous thing, right? And that comes from, I'm sorry to push on you, that comes from your natural goodness, right? That's my point, right? You got this incredible rush. You were for 12 years in the bowels of the pornography industry, and you got a rush when you did something unbelievably good, right? Point in question, Luke Ford gets turned on by doing good, right? And that's your natural goodness. That's not Luke Ford the schmuck. That's Luke Ford who says, oh my God, I saved lives. There were actresses who were going to act with this guy, right? And I saved lives, and I got a rush that I didn't get. I would imagine, I don't know about the bowels of, I haven't been for 12 years in the bowels of the pornography industry, but I would imagine there's a lot of pseudo-rushes going on there, right? One would think. But tell me if I'm wrong, and you'll correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but what you're saying is this was a bigger rush than anything else that happened there, right? Because you were saving lives. I mean, so it feels to me that actually validates exactly what I'm trying to express by your TT. Have a little feel for. That's right. So, but only them, not in spirit, right? But that actually validates what I'm trying to say, right? That Luke Ford, in all of his complex contradictions, is turned on by doing good. He's turned on by actually doing good in the world, and just like getting the story right creates good in the world. But when you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall and you get the story wrong, it creates a lot of bad in the world. Okay, next question. That was a good conversation. Okay, thank you. Let me go on to the next question. Hey, are you sure you don't want a copy of Soul Prince? I got one right here. I'm telling you.
It's tempting.
It's no tempting, right? Please give me my copy of Soul Prince. I'd love one now. I just want people to say there's no video here. Luke's trying to hold himself back. He's grabbing for the book.
Let me just luxuriate in it.
He's pleading.
Let me bathe in it.
See that? He's coming along, Luke. He's coming along. Okay, here's my next question. You said something this morning. Maybe we could begin with that quote about victim consciousness. I mean, you didn't use those words. Those are my words. Maybe just remind me of the quote. We'll start from there.
A professor of a recent book on happiness said that you can either be in the problem-solving mindset or you can be in the victim mindset, but you cannot be in both simultaneously. Being in one precludes the other. So if you feel like you're in charge of your life and that you can take steps to improve your life, you cannot simultaneously be feeling sorry for yourself. And if you are feeling sorry for yourself, and you are bathing in that, and you're bathing in how you've been screwed over, you cannot take steps while you're in that mindset to improve your life.
Right. I mean, I told you this morning. I said I would say it again when we talk. I think that's incredibly beautiful and incredibly well stated. Both. I don't just expand on that. Maybe try and apply it a little bit to contemporary reality and to things we want to talk about. So, what I said this morning was that a person can either be a victim or a player. And a victim, as you described it, a victim is acted upon. Victim means I'm not an actor. I'm being acted upon. Someone's doing it to me all the time. And a player always places him or herself at the center of the action, and therefore always acts. And you have to either choose in life to be a victim or to be a player. Or to say it differently, and maybe which is closer to your professor, either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. Right? A slight reframing of that late 60s, what was it, Eldridge Cleaver? Stokely Carmichael, one of those folks. So that's a very powerful thing. So a person is a victim says, they did it to me, I'm not powerful, I'm powerless. A person is a player says, I'm powerful, and I can shape my future because I take responsibility for my present. And a responsibility means responsibility, right? The ability to respond. If I have no ability, right, to respond, right, then I can't shape my future. You know, it's kind of like that, you know, in a company. Let's turn this phone off. Kind of like that in a company, right? You know, if a person says, hey, you know, they did it, you know, so then they cover themselves, but actually they're not that helpful to the company, because every time something happens, somebody else is at fault, so they're not part of the solution because they're making themselves not part of the problem. So I think that's a very, very big deal. So we can maybe talk about that for a few minutes, because it seems like a very, very big idea. You know, in other words, and let me take myself as an example. Why take someone else, right? So I've gone through a hard 2 years. Now the question is, how am I going to tell the story of these 2 years? There's a couple of different ways I can tell it. I'm actually working on a book now. It's called Spiritually Incorrect, which is about, you know, these couple of years. And I'm sure I'm going to get a blurb from you. Nodding, Luke's nodding and smiling. You know, and what I do in Spiritually Incorrect is I try and tell the story of what happened without mentioning any person, directly or indirectly, without slandering anyone. You know, not talking about people, just talking about what are the big ideas here, what's going on here, right? I try and talk about it from 10 different lenses. And what was you send me an email last night?
Rashomon.
Right. Just tell me about
it. Which means seeing the same story from different perspectives.
Right. So I don't tell it from the perspectives of people. I use a different kind of prism of ideas. Right. So one way of telling the story would be, they did it to me. Story of betrayal. And we'll get to betrayal later, because we talked about that this morning. You raised that a couple of times as one of the core questions you asked. So we'll get back to betrayal. But there's a betrayal story. You know, betrayal story, maybe I betrayed someone, you know, by, you know, maybe, you know, by not sharing, you know, that I was going out with people, you know, that were in my circle, and I should have shared that with my partner, you know, when running the organization. That was my fault. That was, you know, a mistake that I made, you know, and because that's my relationship, which is private with that person, you know, why and how that came about is, you know, my private conversation with him, which is not for here. You know, maybe people betrayed me, which I'm not going to talk about, you know, in this right now in this context, you know, but that's only one lens. That lens by itself, as valid as it may be, is a victim lens. If I stay in that lens, that's the only lens, and I'm a victim. And even if that lens would be 90% true, I have no power over that lens. I remain completely powerless, and it's just not a lot of fun to be powerless. It's not fun, it's not aesthetic, and it's not holy. And it kind of, you know, so the question is, what's my 10% or 20% or 5% or 50%, whatever the percent is. So I've got to identify what my percent in any story that happens to me. I've got to identify what my part in that story is. What did I do to help create the conditions that allow what happened to me to happen? Because that's where my power is. So if I could say it pretty differently, Luke,